to the studio. I was going through the mail that I got this week, and I got a couple new items which will be featured in an upcoming video, but I thought I would just show them. They are some stockings that will be quilted out, and Elementz has a couple different ways to do those. They have digital patterns for computerized long arm system. They also have paper pantos for doing behind the machine, and then there's tearaway patterns that you would be able to use on the domestic machine, and they would give you a quilted design for holiday stockings, and they come in several different patterns. The ones that I got this week were Moulin Rouge and Holiday Garland, so I'm looking forward to those. I know in one of the other videos I also showed quilting a design out on a table runner, and then I colored it after I had it quilted using a, let's see, what did I use? Oh, all-purpose ink, Sukaniko all-purpose ink. But I also want to do a couple other videos showing different ways of coloring quilted patterns. So that's something that will be upcoming. In a previous video, I showed you how to do the Petal power in the Christmas pattern. And this one I'm just sending off from my friend. She's going to whip down the binding for me, which is the part I don't like to do, and also the sleeve. So in a previous video we did that. So today I thought, since it's springtime now, although I can't control if it's springtime when you watch this, I thought I would do the spring version of Petal Power. This is a beautiful pink and bluish version, and if you can see down here, I've already pieced the quilt panel that I'm going to put my applique on. I just looked at some of the colors that were in the kit and did my inner and outer border based on the sizing of the background pattern. So I'm going to take the pattern out, show you what the fabric looks like, and exactly how we put together the paper pattern, so because it does come in sheets on this particular version. So I'm going to pull you in a little bit closer and we'll show you how that works. So we have our Applique Elementz pack. This kit has everything that you see here inside the box. All of these pieces of fabric are pre-cut and laser fused with the Steam-A-Seam 2. So I'm going to pull out first the color cover sheet, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in my little sign holder, and I can reference that for, as I'm assembling the pieces. And then you can see all of the components. All of these components are laser cut with the fabric, and they're pre-fused with Steam-A-Seam 2. So you'll see the paper backing and then the fusible web underneath. And then we have all of the components for the applique. I always like to get all of those out before I start. And some of them are mixed in between the pages. And you can see we have the full instructions on the back, how this process works. And then we have 8 sheets of paper. The first page here has the instructions on how to put together the 8 pages to make the completed pattern. And you'll see some of the pages have dotted lines. Those dotted lines we're going to take and cut with a rotary cutter for paper, or with paper scissors. Anywhere you see the dotted line, we'll cut directly on the dotted line. And some of them will be on the side, some of them will be on the top. And then once we get all of these pieces cut, then we'll go ahead and assemble them, either using a glue stick or with some magic tape, or you could use both. Sometimes I use both. So that's an easy process. I'm going to go ahead and cut these now and piece them together, and then we'll go ahead and lay out all of our pieces and get ready to put together this really easy project. At this point, I have cut all of the papers on the dotted line. I used my rotary cutter that I've designated as a paper rotary cutter, And the instructions will tell you how to join these pages together in sets of 2. You can see where the printing stops here. That's where I'm going to apply my glue stick. And I'm going to overlap the pages. They're all numbered so you know which pages to join together. So we'll do all of these in sets of 2 until they're all assembled. Kind of a brainless little activity. This is certainly something if you were doing with the kids or grandkids, they might be able to help depending on their skill level. Sometimes they're even better at this than we are as adults. After you get these together in sets of 2, then we're going to go ahead and complete the top row and the bottom row, and then we'll merge those 2 together. I'm at that point here now, joining the 2 top sections. Had mine together and I just peeled it back off. That's why sometimes I will use both tape and the glue stick. The glue stick sometimes holds it together a little bit tighter, long enough just to get the tape on it, which is a little bit more permanent, until you can get the glue stick dried. And now I will just carefully do the whole top section. Will go on the bottom, and we'll get these merged together. So that's it with the glue stick. If you want now, you could come back with tape. And that will hold those pieces together long enough for us to do everything we need to do. If they're a tiny bit off, it will be good enough for you to do your pattern placements. Since no one will see this paper pattern when things are finished anyway, if they're off just a tiny bit, it's not going to be the end of creation. So I can go ahead and put this underneath my pre-prepared quilt top and start getting the fabric pieces in place. You can see there's quite a few of the flower components, not as many on the bicycle, so I think it'll go together fairly nicely, but you'll see how this process works in just a flash. I have my light box, my paper pattern, and my fabric top. I've made it a complete top here, but I have all those things layered, and from the seam allowance from the inner border to the bottom of the wheels, I just wanted to make sure that that was accurate so that the bicycle is level when it's being viewed on the wall, and we have it at 2 inches. I'm not as concerned about the 2 ends because there's not a, it's longer at the bottom and taller at the top over here. So I'm not as worried about that, but I'm going to bring over all of my components, and some of these components I'm just going to start layering in place. We have the 2 bicycle wheels, and those will go first. And I think I'm going to go ahead and just lay out some of the pieces that I could see and I can figure out while I'm here. A lot of the flowers here will be placed in. I'm just going to start laying some of the flowers in groups, I think. This is what I was looking for. The spokes of the wheel. So that I think I'm going to go ahead and layer these one component at a time so I can see them. So it's very easy. The paper just is going to peel off. All of these pieces are manufactured in mass production. All of the Steam Seam 2 is applied to large sheets of fabric, and then after the fusible batting is on it, then they go ahead and laser cut these to the most precise way that they can to get the most pieces out of each unit. So there is as little waste as possible in the manufacturing process. But this saves you from having to buy all of these different colors of fabric in the quantity that would be required to complete this. You don't have to buy all of the fusible backing, and you don't have to do all of this cutting. And this laser cutting is far more accurate than what we could do with a pair of scissors at home. So it sounds like I just got an Amazon package delivered. Now that I have these pieces, these compound pieces in place, starting with the top and working down, I know that those are going to be in the right place. So I will do the same thing for the other wheel. I can just go ahead and peel the top one and put it on, and then the next one down. And that way I'll be able to see, because there's a limit to how many layers of fabric you'll be able to see your light box. So if I'm only doing one layer at a time with each component, I'm going to get more accurate results. On the label it says this is peel, place, and press, and you can see exactly what they mean by that. It's just a process of peeling the paper off the back, placing it where you want it. Now see, if I put it there, it would stick temporarily, but if I needed to move it, all I have to do is pick it back up. It hasn't damaged anything because it's not fused yet, and lay it in place. And we'll just continue layering these pieces until we get the bicycle completed. I think ever since I started quilting, I've always been enamored with the idea of having seasonal quilts to decorate the house. And one of the things that kind of pulls you back from that is the length of time a hand applique project like this would take. Spring was only 4 months of the year, but it could take you 4 months to do this if you were doing it by hand. And this process makes it so easy. This little piece is giving me a little bit of trouble. I can't catch the edge. So what I do sometimes is I'll just take a pen and score the back of the paper. That way when you bend it, it will lift up, and you can go ahead and get a difficult piece to release from the background paper. Let's see, did I do this one? I haven't done that one yet. There are 4 different seasons in the Petal Power series. I remember at Spring Market when this was released, all 4 of the designs were sold out from everything we had in the first 3 hours of the show. So you could see that it was a very, very popular series. Another thing that you can tell on the pattern, when you see dotted lines continue, here on this pattern, this is a dotted line. That means that this part of the bike frame goes underneath the flowers. And sometimes I get everything in place, pull the pattern out, and will then look again to make sure that I've done everything right. Because when you're working on a lot of pieces, sometimes it's easy to get confused. In my area, we don't have high humidity, certainly not in this time of the year. It's very low humidity in the winter and spring. So this paper peels off really, really easily. If you're in a more humid area, it might be the Steam 2 might be a little stickier. I haven't even looked yet to see what quilting pattern we will quilt this in. If you enjoy doing this, we have the paper pattern for these. So if you only wanted to do it as a hand applique project, or if you wanted to use your own fabric and you had willing to do all the steam and seam yourself, we have just a paper pattern for this. If you have a Cameo or Brother Scan and Cut, we also have SVG files that you can get, download and send to your machine, and then you can run each one of these colors through the machine and do your own project. So you could either get a paper pattern for handwork, or you could get a SVG file for doing that one. The glue is still on the paper, so what I will do is put this piece aside and re-iron this piece back on in the shape. And sometimes just with the manufacturing process that happens. Let's see, what other pink parts do I have for the frame? If I'd realized that before I peeled the paper off, I would have stopped. That one looks like it's going to be sticky too. Now I'm like cautiously peeling the paper. I'm just going to start putting some of these items in categories to make it a little bit easier. I know a lot of places like to do cutaways when they're doing videos like this, but I know that not everybody is at the same skill level. Some people don't understand a particular step. Some people are absolutely just starting. So I always try and take my time and go through this process step by step on the video. I know that if you get bored with a section, you can always fast forward. But if I skip over a step that you didn't understand, there's no way to go back and catch that. So I know that sometimes I really hit every mark as far as talking through a step, but we're all at a different place in the race. I'm going to look and see. The darker one was in the back. You can see here on the pattern, the darker pink was in the back on the handlebars, and I've put the lighter one there. So all I have to do is lift that piece back up, and I can set the darker one in the background. All of these pieces are repositionable up until the point that I hit it with the iron, and then it's permanent. So that's just a nice little component of the process of the Steam Seam 2, which is why we like it, because it's repositionable. And I'm going to continue with some of these flower components, putting them in piles. There's a lot of little dots, it looks like. We have 2 different size dots, multiple size leaves. I'm really just sorting pieces out now. So that is all the pieces sorted out. I'm going to go ahead and readjust this a little bit and get my iron on, and then I'll bring the camera back on. I'm not really doing any placement at this point. I'm just going to shift the pattern down. I have just moved everything down a little bit. Everything will stay in place because of the Steam Seam 2. I'll just adjust my paper and my top a little bit. Sometimes when you move it, it's a little hard to get everything shifted back exactly. But I'm going to go ahead and continue placing the flowers. But at first, I'm going to do these 2 pieces. The fusible web is not completely adhered to this fabric, and this piece it completely came off. So I have my iron on, and I'm just going to re-iron these 2 pieces, allowing that fusible web to reheat and adhere to the backing fabric. Once this cools down, then I'll be able to remove that paper and put those 2 components in place. It really only takes a couple minutes for it to cool down. But I'm going to continue on with the flowers. You do have 3 different size leaves. So whatever size the leaf is, you'll know which color it is. You can also always refer to the color cover sheet. The back of my wheel, this was the side of the paper that was stuck to the fusible web, and it has a little bit of stickiness to it left. So I always flip those upside down and use that as my trash bin while I'm working on something, so that my little pieces don't fly all over the studio. They just kind of stick to it like a post-it note. I just had that on there and it looked fine. Maybe that's not the right one. Let me see. Sometimes we only have one. Sometimes I wonder if the part of the design isn't inverted upside down, because I always get it mixed up. But I got that one. I should be able to peel this off now. I'm going to use my pen trick again. The pen trick is also nice if you're dealing with a delicate piece that you don't want to distort the edges, like sometimes a circle. You don't want to keep folding over the edge of the circle and then have it fray the circle. So sometimes it's nice to do that little score in the back, and then you can peel the paper away from the center out rather than from the edge, and it really protects that component. But I think we've got a circle that goes there too. Nope, it's white. That's just the white background. So let's see. I'm going to place this over here so I can see it a little better. All of these make up these center flowers. If I get these in place, okay. Probably not much rhyme or reason to how I'm grabbing pieces. I'm just looking at it like a puzzle piece when you're trying to find the edges or anything that you know is going to be an easy piece to find, and that reduces the pile of applique pieces, kind of like doing the edges and corners. So I do all the easy ones first, and then I know whatever's left only has a few places to go. I've got two more of these petal powers that I could do. I've already done the winter. This is the spring. We also have a summer and fall version. And the colors are all based on the season. I don't know if you will have noticed, but the winter one said Merry Christmas at the bottom. This one doesn't have any writing on it. And let's see, it's teal and pink, so I could put that on. Even the little tiny backing paper sticks to my fingers. I think that's too big. It's not the right piece. You can almost tell visually when you make a mistake on something. I was using one of the circles that was the wrong size, and just visually you could tell it was too big. So let's see, I'm missing a big leaf here. Once I get some of these leaves finished, it leaves a lot fewer pieces for the applique, so the puzzle will be easier to put together. And if these were off a tiny bit, nobody's going to know once the pattern's gone. So you have some creative license in moving the pieces around. I also in the past have ordered different components like leaves or hearts or snowflakes. We sell different packs of just individual components like that, and you can always add or embellish the pattern a little bit with additional items. We should be just about done with the flowers. Just one more small flower. Okay, I'm going to take a break for a second just to double check everything that we've done so far, and then I'll come back on camera and do these last flowers, but I just want to make sure we have everything in the right place. Just for a little bit of my sanity, I went and just took a few minutes. I raised some of the flowers up in front of the others, and I had to do some of my circles, because when you're talking and doing videos, sometimes it's easy to make a really simple mistake that you would not have made if you were not talking in front of the camera. So I also put all of these flower components where they go, just so I wouldn't be so confused and get flustered. I'm going to do all three of my centers first, and then I'm going to look at the picture and see which ones overlap. I'm fairly certain that these go to the background. I would think they would fan out. So the flower piece is next, the wildly printed one. So I'll do those two, and then we'll do the polka dots last on the two ends and then the bottom. I used to know what that bottom was called, botanically speaking, but at the moment it escapes me. I easily could have skipped all of this for you, just in the consideration of time. So I'm going to go ahead and do these last two flowers, and then I'll bring you back in after I get the light box out and the paper pattern out, and we can go ahead and fuse these in place. Okay, I took a few minutes and I really went over the color cover sheet to make sure that I had the flowers pulled out so that they were layered in the correct order. Not that perhaps it might make a huge difference, but the designer did plan it in a certain way, so I went ahead and just kept it that way. They play a lot with the value to make sure that these items do look dimensional when they're finished. I have my three flowers finished. I also stood in front of it because right now I'm looking at it upside down and it just looks like objects. But I came around to the front and I looked at it to make sure that visually everything seemed like it was in place. I moved my handlebars, I readjusted all of these components, and I have everything looking the way I want it to now. So the next part for me is to get the iron ready, and I do have the iron on, and I'm going to go ahead. The product that we use is Steam 2. Steam is a component of the name because it is required as a component of the fusing process. If you have ever seen a video with me before, you will have heard me say that I do not keep water in my iron, simply because that is why the most common reason irons fail. The second most common reason would be because somebody drops it. So I just keep water in a spritz bottle. And I'm going to go ahead and cover this whole piece with a Teflon pressing sheet. And I see that I just knocked that out of place when I did that. So I'm going to go ahead and start fusing. The reason I use the Teflon pressing sheet is because many things. The Teflon pressing sheet will protect my fabric from getting scorched with the heat of the iron. But because the iron does have to transfer its heat through the Teflon pressing sheet, and in some cases, like the wheel, where there's 1, 2, 3 different layers, I want to let the heat have time to transfer through all of the layers. Also, on that note, I will fuse the whole piece from the top, and then I'll lay the top upside down on its back so I could fuse the whole piece again from the back side, just to make absolutely sure that we do fuse this properly. The other reason I use the Teflon pressing sheet is to keep any of the fusible material from the applique components from seeping around the edge and getting on the sole plate of my iron. So that prevents me from ever having to clean the iron. It also protects the edge of the applique pieces. If I get lazy and do this because I got bored and I wasn't concentrating, the edge of that iron could hit the edge of one of the applique components and crinkle it up. And then when the iron's over top of it and you can't see it, you're fusing a crinkled piece in place, which is not ideal. So the Teflon pressing sheet or the ironing pressing sheet protects the edges of the applique and keeps them in the exact shape that we want them in. Everybody's going to have a different time count for how long that iron has to sit in place, the thickness of your Teflon pressing sheet, the heat setting on your iron, the quality of the iron. All of these things are going to come into play with how many seconds it takes to properly fuse. If you have any doubt, once you turn it back over, you could touch some of the edges and see that they're all in place. And if you need to, you can always spot check and go back and reheat with the iron. That's why I always iron it from the front and from the back. If you are quilting, or if you are the kind of person that would like to top stitch the edge and you're getting a lot of that fusible material on the needle, then that's an indication that you have not fused long enough. If you fuse properly, there shouldn't be an excess of fusible material to come out from between the layers and stick to the needle. I've never ever heard of anybody over-fusing the components where the fusible dissipates. It's not possible for it to just evaporate, so you can't overdo it. The only thing you could do is scorch your fabric. So I wouldn't walk away from the process, but you can take your time and do it right the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and carry on with this and then fuse from the back side as well, and then I'll show you my finished piece. And just like that, we're finished. This is another little beautiful wall quilt, great for seasonal decor. The pattern is called Petal Power, but there are 4 different versions of it based on the holidays, the 4 seasons. This one did not have any writing with it, which I'm okay with. I did pre-select my inner border and outer border just looking at the fabric. One of the things I will tell you that another reason why I like to iron it from the back, sometimes when you get everything ironed from the front, you get a little bit of micro wrinkles around the applique shapes. And by turning it over and ironing it from the back, you're really focusing on ironing that background, and you can get all of those little tiny wrinkles out that sometimes happen as you are working with the iron on the top. So that's just a secondary reason to fuse it from the back a second time. But this one's in the wraps. Next time you see it, it will be on the quilting machine. I haven't even looked yet to see what quilting pattern I would be interested in doing for this, but we've got 2 more of these that we can do this year. I did the winter one last year, but it's always nice for me to have projects to look forward to. As always, I thank you for spending time with me here in the studio. I personally always appreciate it when I see happy comments on the videos, or that people have liked it or have shared it. That's personally for me the reward that I get from doing it. It makes it seem like people like what I'm doing, and I'm not just frittering away my time here in the studio. So it's always nice. Subscribe if you like, but we do a video every week, try and release them every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. and then we also pepper you throughout the year with occasional other videos as time permits. But keeping up with the once a week is a pretty good keeping me in my step routine. So thanks for stopping by the studio, and we'll see you all next time.